Hey there, I'm Annalise, host of What's Trending Now on rBeatz.com, bringing you this week's DJ World Beats hottest trending bangers on rBeatz Radio and Media Streaming Network. Let's get right into it. This week, we're welcoming Greasy Keys to rBeatz.com. As a host, he will be bringing more local talent with a spice of life and keys. Later this month, yours truly will be bringing you Eli Yasin to the studio. Tune in May 17th at 12:30 p.m. to hear about his new single, Run Away With Me, as well as a live performance right here on rBeatzRadio.com. Until then, listen in as our streams are updated, fresh, each and every week. Here's what's trending now on the Vessel Radio. DJ World Beats brings you J1 with his single, Respectfully. Number 2, we have Hallelujah by Isaiah Robin. Number 3, we have Heaven on Earth by Newsboys. Up next, 4 of the latest from Forrest Frank's EP, God is Good, Low Key, Always, and Good Day. Teddy Swims busting through the door on 25/8 366 Global Radio with his song, The Door. Last but certainly not least, we have Tom McDonald, God Mode, playing on We Global Radio. That concludes this week's countdown. Be sure to check back for what's trending on the local, national, and international music scene with DJ World Beats' hottest trending bangers dropping on rBeatz.com.
Welcome to the rBeatz.com studio. I'm Terry Hudson, and we're here today for a special edition of We Talk Raw. And the guest that I have in the studio today is an author. She's a trainer. She is a speaker. And she is one of the best coffee conversations I've ever had. She's also a self-proclaimed, self-professed self-help junkie. So welcome to the rBeatz Studios, Julie Nee.
Thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled to be here.
Can you believe from the time that we sat at the coffee shop and we had this conversation that one day we'd be having this in an actual studio?
Well, you said it was going to happen, so you manifested it when we had that conversation that day, and here it is coming to fruition. And honestly, it's all thanks to you.
Yeah, and you know, back at that time, you were just talking about writing your first book, and now you are a full-fledged author who's speaking everywhere. So let's talk about first. Let's let the listeners know who Julie Nee is. Like, how did you even become this self-professed self-help junkie?
Well, I think it all started, honestly, when I was growing up. Both of my parents were quite positive, and my mom was a single mom, and she always said, if you can see it, you can do it, and anything that you believe is possible. And so I think she started me young.
That's great support system right there.
It really is. And I think, you know, especially in my work, and I'll tell you a little bit about my work, but especially in my work, I kind of see people along a positivity continuum. And some of us are quite naturally positive and others are naturally not positive. And the truth is, all of us can work on it and improve.
Correct.
But I found myself really, this journey professionally around positivity and mindset and energy and all the things really started when I read Jon Gordon's book, The Energy Bus. And one of my guys on my team at Hershey, I spent 19 years with the Hershey company selling chocolate and leading teams. And one of my guys, when I got promoted and I was his new boss, he gave me a copy of that book, The Energy Bus. And really it changed how I looked at leadership and mindset and positivity so much, because I started doing the work with my team. And I saw my team thrive, not only when the business was good, because it's kind of easy for all of us to keep going on in life when everything's going our way.
Right.
And the path is smooth and it's easy street. But when the chips are down and life gets hard and business gets hard, that's when the positivity and the mindset and all the things really kick in. And I saw it kick in for my team. So it really just kind of gave my brain evidence that this works, even more than kind of what I learned as a child growing up. So that's when I started becoming a little bit of this kind of self-help junkie. So I started reading all the books. I read another book and another book and another book. And then I started putting more and more things into practice. And I saw myself continuing to get better, but also I saw people around me getting
Right.
better. And it made me just want to do more and more and more of it.
And positivity is a thing that's absolutely needed in this world today. With everything around us, and we're going to talk a lot about that today because it encompasses a lot. That you do. There's so much involved in where you train, where you write, all of those things. That positivity is such a big key in, and we'll get into that. Tell me a little bit more about what you did with the Hershey Company.
Yes. So I spent 19 years and I started out kind of at the ground level, selling, literally slinging cases and climbing around back rooms of grocery stores. But my career grew over time and I got promoted and moved multiple times into different cities. I lived in Hershey, Pennsylvania, the sweetest place on earth, for a few years. And I grew to leading teams all over the US who were selling to our key customers. And I learned so much during that time about business, but also about leadership and about people and about how to help people step into their greatness. Because really the job of leaders is to create other leaders, right? And to make the people around you better. And
becoming that person that you need to be for that task.
yes, exactly. So I spent 19 years in that career. And when I was exposed to Jon Gordon, a seed was planted in me. And I loved the work at that time just about the energy bus. I was like, this book is just life-changing and I want to speak about it. And so I started building a relationship with the author, Jon Gordon. And about 8.5 years ago, I left Hershey. I left my big corporate job and I jumped into this world of speaking and training and workshops. And my mindset at the time was, I'm just going to leave my corporate job and I'm going to start this new speaking thing and I'm going to be crushing it right off the bat. And it didn't actually materialize like that.
Oh, no. This is one of the things I love from our coffee conversation is this was one of my key takeaways from that, is that you actually told him, and I want you to tell how you connected, like how you brought him in, but you actually told him, I'm going to work with you.
Oh, I sure did. Yes. I mean, some people would say that I stalked Jon Gordon. But I really did. So I read The Energy Bus and I wrote him a letter and I told him what impact it made on my team. And he wrote me back. And I was so surprised that he actually wrote back that I read another one of his books, The Carpenter, and I wrote another letter. Then I wrote The Seed and I wrote another letter. Then I was like, I'm going to hire him to come in and speak at this women's leadership event here in Charlotte. And he came in and I was fangirling so much at that time. It's really quite embarrassing. But he got on the stage and he said, I think Julie's more passionate about my work than I am. And I was like, yes, I am. And it was kind of ridiculous that year. That was back in March of 2014. And I kept saying to my husband, the Jon Gordon thing, the Jon Gordon thing, the Jon Gordon thing. And after 9 months of me talking about that, in December of 2014, he said, what exactly is the Jon Gordon thing? And I said, I'm going to be working with him next year. So I wrote him one final letter in December of 2014, and it said, top 5 reasons why we should work together in 2015. And a couple days later, he called. And I was at the Y, walking around the track with my son. My daughter was at basketball practice. My son was little at the time. Now he's like up here. And I saw the caller ID pop up on my phone, and it said Jacksonville, Florida. And that's where Jon Gordon lives. And I said to my son, yeah, I was like, this is going to be Jon Gordon. And he's like, whatever, mommy. He didn't know what I was talking about. So he calls and I'm in the Y and it's so loud and I have no paper, no pen, no nothing, no AirPods, whatever. And so it was Jon. And he said, what do you want to do with this? And I said, I want to speak about the energy bus. At that time, I just wanted to do keynote talks about the energy bus. And he said, how much money do you make? And I told him. And I was like, do I tell this dude the truth? Like, what do I do? And I told him and he said, wow, it's going to take a long time to replace that. And he said, I recommend you go out and start speaking for free before you quit your day job, which was really excellent advice. So I did.
But not the advice you wanted at the time, right?
Right. Of course. And again, I had that mindset that I'm going to go out and start crushing this, right? Yeah. But I did do exactly what he said. And I went out and I started speaking for free. So I spoke to junior leagues and Rotary clubs and women's groups and really anyone who would listen to me talk about the energy bus. And after about 6 months of that, I was like, this is awesome. Like, I love this. So I had an opportunity to make a change with my corporate Hershey job and go join Jon. And so I did. In August of 2015, I left Hershey and I started doing this thing with Jon. And It started out so small. I mean, it was so small. Like my first talk, like for anyone out there who wants to be a speaker, don't expect to be a hugely paid speaker right off the bat. My first talk was $500. And I drove to some.
That's actually a lot more than most first time speakers are going to get. You know that. I mean, because we know speakers and we know they go out there sometimes as just organizations that they have less than that in the budget.
Yeah.
But at least they're in front of somebody and they're getting started.
That's right. And you have to start somewhere. And so I did. And I mean, I was in some tiny little town in South Carolina with a school bus, like the principal of the school that I was speaking drove the school bus and picked up all her teachers. And it was awesome. But those reps that came in the early years, or the early, at least the first year or two, that's how you get good is by practicing. And so I had a lot of kind of low dollar opportunities and also opportunities to barter with clients. So, hey, I'll come speak for free, but can you record it? Or can you take professional photos? Or can you do something? So I get something great. I deliver a great talk from a well-known brand and entity, in this case, Jon Gordon and the Energy Bus. But I get photos and videos and things like that I can build my website. So, again, for anyone who's out there wanting to do this, don't be afraid to barter some things because it can get you what you need to kind of get a strong foundation, both the reps and potentially photo and video.
It's so key to ask.
Yeah.
I mean, that old adage, if you don't ask, the answer is
right.
always no. But a lot of people will accept no before they'll ask. And having that in the beginning is key because you will get more than you think you will get if you just, again, ask.
Absolutely.
And you don't get great unless you do. You just don't. You don't get to become a great singer, a great speaker, a great actor, anybody I've worked with. You don't get to become that unless you start and you just get good. And that heavy lifting in the beginning, and you did that. I mean, but through that, something that I love, through you going ahead and doing it, you saw that it's not about the parts you love. What makes it are sometimes, well, all the times, the parts that you don't love in the beginning that fuel the other parts. And I see so many people, they'll start and they'll stop because of the things that they don't love. But those things that they don't love over time get easier. Yes. But they have to do the things they don't love in the beginning to propel what they do love.
So true. I mean, the amount of outreach I did at the beginning and the amount of follow-ups. I remember having a conversation with someone recently. It's a younger woman, and she said, well, I reached out to the client once and they didn't respond, so I guess they don't want what I'm offering. And I was like, oh, no, absolutely not. I would reach out to people 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 times.
Yeah.
And on one of those later times, they would come back and say, oh my gosh, so sorry, I've been so busy. I'm so glad you stayed with me. And of course, not everyone is going to do that. But sometimes it just takes a couple of times and someone knows that you're persistent. It's not a one and done reach out and then you don't want what I'm offering because it's a value. And I think the other piece is just around pricing. I know you didn't ask about this, but I really want people to feel confident standing in a price that's fair, whether it's a keynote or
knowing
a workshop or whatever you're doing. It's never just the 1 hour or just the 3 hours or just the whatever that you're heading to go do. It's all the preparation time. It's all the thinking that you're doing about it. It's the travel. It's all the things. Those things have value. Your brain and your preparation has value.
And they especially have value when you set them in your mindset.
Yes.
And you know ahead of time, then they become more valuable to you.
Yeah.
And when for those, there might be people out there that don't know who Jon is. With what I know, of course, the best-selling author, but he's kind of the motivational, it seems like, go-to for sports teams. I know, he's worked with, I think, the San Francisco 49ers, the Georgia Bulldogs, the LA Dodgers, and, different people that you read like that. So that was a big one for you to attach to.
Oh,
in the
yes.
beginning.
I mean, Sean McVay and Dabo Sweeney from Clemson for 10 years and just all the things. So it was a big one to attach to. And I'm glad you noticed that because really for me, and this is not to minimize myself at all, but when I'm deciding to be a speaker and a workshop leader and a trainer, if I'm starting as Julie Nobody versus Julie Nee in concert with the Jon Gordon companies and that known entity of the Energy Bus, the power of positive leadership, the power of a positive team, it makes a difference. It gets you in the door because he is a known brand. So I will forever be grateful that I had that brand
Yeah,
and John's brand along the way, giving me that strong foundation, because it would have been, I mean, it was already hard and a journey, to build the business, but with just my name only, it would have taken a lot longer.
right. And I'll say that whether people are collaborating with bigger artists, with what they're doing, or bigger authors, with social media or live events, or whatever it is. I started in the Christian world and music, and what they would do is they would bring in a big artist, for instance, and then they would appear on that bill, and they called it their homecoming, at the time. But that big artist would draw new fans to what they were doing. So that was a key point in what you did. But the other thing is, I'm sure you were intimidated, probably. Knowing you, maybe you weren't, but being around somebody like that, if you're the most knowledgeable person in the room, you might be in the wrong room to stay in
Right.
at first, because you can't learn from people that are not, more knowledgeable. And again, that was one of the things that I saw with that. And you guys co-authored a leadership course together. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes. So as I was working with Jon over the years, so it started out, I just wanted to speak about the energy bus. Then clients would say, I'd like a workshop on this. I'd like a keynote on this. I'd like a thing about this. And so I was creating all these things. And then clients started asking for training. We really need training. We want a more robust, substantial training program. And at that time, it was the power of positive leadership that we were talking about. And so I kept going to Jon and saying, we need to create this. We need to create this. And he was not ready when we first started talking about it. It took a couple of years to kind of bring him along. And he kept just kind of saying, God's perfect timing. I'll know when the time is right. And finally, he said, yes, okay, we can create it. So we created this full day power of positive leadership training program. And we launched it in 2019, in March of 2019, together. And we were doing public events everywhere. And then I was out doing private events with clients all the time. And we just kept building that. And we were building an ecosystem also because I certified trainers. So I would train other trainers to go out and do the work as well, so we can extend the mission beyond just our team. And then as that grew over a couple of years, my colleague, Amy P. Kelly, she came in and co-created the Power of a Positive Team training with Jon. And then last year, we kind of recreated the whole thing, and we created, Amy and Jon and I created what we call a day of development for your mindset, leadership, and teamwork. And we took the best of the energy bus, the power of positive leadership, and the power of a positive team, and we put it all into one awesome training day, one day of development, and we sprinkled in a couple of keynotes. And then Amy and I built workshops, all new and fresh half-day workshops for those three programs as well. So from a content creation standpoint, I have created a ton of content for Jon, and honestly for my own stuff now too. I've become very proficient in creating content and workshops and exercises and things that work to help people apply principles and lessons inside any kind of structure.
And in the positivity, that's something I see in teams it's missing. Even the hierarchies of like retail establishments, for instance.
Oh, yes.
Where the district manager walks in and the manager is quaking in his boots, and the employees don't feel their worth, and it's like the negativity trickles down, and they lose a lot of employees for this. And in a new age, people aren't as willing to accept, and they don't grow, in that. How does your course and your teaching help that? Because I know that corporations, anybody that's listening in business, they definitely need to bring you in and hire you, because it changes the whole dynamic of what they do. But tell us more about that.
Yeah, it really does. And I want to say two things on that. One is, inside our work, we say all the time, positivity is the competitive advantage. And that is the truth. That's for us personally. It helps us stand out inside organizations and just in life. When you see someone who is smiling at you and saying good morning and maybe sharing a compliment or some encouragement or whatever, you're like, wow, that person is amazing, because it's so unique and special in a world where there are so many negative people all around us. But for organizations, think about that. You mentioned retail organizations. Let's just use a grocery store, for example. I go through the grocery line. If someone is saying, how are you today? Did you find everything you need? And that's kind of the foundational thing. They always ask you that. But making some conversation, smiling, maybe sharing a compliment. How can I help you? Is there anything else you need today? All those things. I want to go back to that place, because they're making an impact on me. And even a smile. It's incredible how powerful it is when someone just smiles at you. When I go to the grocery store sometimes, I'll be on one end and I'll kind of look down the whole line of the store and see how many people are smiling. And a lot of times, most of them are not. Everyone looks miserable, and that's not what's going to help you stand out from the competition. It's just the simple things, the smiling and the how can I help and all those things. So, and even you think about organizations and customer service phone calls, when you call into an organization, any company, and they're kind and you can hear the smile over the phone. And it's like, I'm going to resolve this for you. I'm going to help you. What do you need? And those are the companies that we want to go back to. So if there's anyone out there listening who thinks this doesn't make a difference in their business, it absolutely does. And we have all the research that tells us why positive, optimistic people outperform their negative counterparts. Positive cultures outperform negative cultures every single time.
Absolutely.
And also, think about the mental health component that's happening in this world right now.
Oh, we're going to talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's going to roll into you as an author. And we will have the information posted on how you can contact Julie and how you can find her books. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Julie as an author. And first, we're going to hear from a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back here at rBeatz.com.
They are playing some of the best hockey in the entire American League right now.
They're the team that you don't want to be lined up against. They've really made a case for themselves as a real threat going down the line here.
A breakaway. Dalby into the zone. High slot shot. He scores! Spencer Knight with the right leg!
And we're back here at rBeatz.com, special edition here of We Talk Raw. Guest in the studio today is Julie Nee, who is, as we said, she's an author, she's a trainer, she's a speaker. Right now, we're going to talk about the author side of Julie Nee. And when I first met her, she hadn't even come out with her first book yet, but now she has a couple. And we want to talk quickly about the first one, which I've actually gone through twice. Love this book. It's called Mirror, Mirror. And there's so many people that are dealing with issues of self-image. They're dealing with the outside negativity. They're dealing with the things that were piled on them, growing up. And the book deals a lot with it. Even deals with being a workaholic, which is something I've been guilty of in my life. And so there were things that basically came home to me, and I looked at things different because of things that happened to you, in that book that I didn't even realize that would even be a factor. Nobody ever told me that until I read your book.
Wow.
So let's go through that. Mirror, Mirror, tell us more about it.
Okay. So the title is Mirror, Mirror. The subtitle is 5 Reflections to Clear the Fog and Help You Shine. And that shine piece is so important because I think when we look in the mirror, a lot of us, and if you see the cover of the book, I'm holding it up here live for those who are actually watching, but it's a foggy mirror on purpose. And you imagine that you're in the shower and you get out of the shower and your mirror is foggy, right? And sometimes we have to swipe our hand across that mirror to clear the fog. And that's what I really meant when I wrote that subtitle. So I want to wipe off that foggy mirror so we can see ourselves and just as who we are as our best and really shine. So it's this idea of, instead of looking in that mirror and seeing, being unkind to ourselves and seeing all the negative things, what if we could see truly in ourselves smiles, acceptance, joy, and really just turn up that dimmer switch inside ourselves?
Yeah.
So we can shine our light on the world, because as you mentioned earlier, the world is a dark place. There are a lot of hard things happening in the world, and there are a lot of people struggling. But the only person we can really control inside that is ourselves. So how do we figure out how to, again, turn up that switch, shine our light on the world? Because when I shine my light on you, then you're going to go shine your light on someone
Absolutely.
else. But it starts with us. And so that word shine is an acronym inside the book, and it's sections. So each letter in the word shine is one of the sections in the book. So the S stands for smile. The H is harmonize, the I is impact, the N is nourish, and the E is elevate. And of course, I can share more about each of those, but that's really the structure of the book.
It is so detailed in those things, but such an understandable read. That it's not something that's just so complex, because there's some self-help books that they're just so complex that you might pull 2 points out of this. But there were like at least 15 or more points, that I pulled from this. And it's just so unbelievable how we talk to ourselves. And you relate that about, I've heard some of this before, but this particular way that you're putting it, especially things that you went through. Mm-hmm. Imagine talking to somebody else that has been through those things like you talk to yourself. It's a different thing.
Yes, our self-talk can be so cruel sometimes. And I know what you're talking about. So for the audience, in 2019, I went through a breast cancer experience. And inside that, of course, included a mastectomy, 5.5 months of chemo, 30 radiation treatments, and even a year later, a couple of reconstruction surgeries that maybe didn't go so well the first time. So it was an experience. But really, after chemo, I had lost all my hair, which was brutal in itself. But the crushing blow was losing my eyebrows and eyelashes. And for any woman listening, I think you can really relate to that, because it looks like your face is erased. And I would look at myself in the mirror and I would say the cruelest things to myself. You're so ugly. Oh my gosh, you're scary. You're literally scary. And because I was scared of myself looking in the mirror, and my kids would say, "Mommy, you're so beautiful." And they would try to encourage me, but I did not believe them. And here's the piece about talking to ourselves in the mirror that's really important. Number one is, of course, we have to rewrite those things. We have to stop our brain and ourselves in our tracks and stop saying those mean things to ourselves, because there's no human in this world that doesn't have those mean things pop into their heads. So we have to stop them. And this is not something that you're going to do once and go, "Oh, no, I'd no longer speak mean things to myself ever again," right? But we have to practice.
Conditioning.
Yes, over and over and over again, kind of stopping those thoughts in their tracks. But the second part of that is we have to speak something that we can believe. So I didn't rewrite when I had to kind of check myself on that whole cancer negative self-talk. I didn't say, "Wow, you are gorgeous," in the mirror to myself, because I did not feel gorgeous. And I wasn't. Frankly, I was not gorgeous. But what I could say to myself that I could believe is, "You are strong. You are a fighter. You are a badass." Whatever I wanted to say that I could believe, that would be speaking life into myself instead of just totally demoralizing myself. And back to what you said at the beginning about the things that we say we would never say to another. I mean, can you imagine if I said to you, or if I said to my daughter, "Wow, you look scary. You look awful. Your face is erased."
And people do say that to their kids sometimes, and their friends. I mean, I've seen it in play, and they, of course, it gets attached to them, and it makes it so much harder. And this is putting it so lightly, but so much harder to get through the things that they have to get through in life. And instead, when you have encouraging forces around you, being that light to other people, being that smile that you see down the aisle when nobody else is smiling, it enforces this thing that you also said in the book about, you've done hard things, you can do them again.
Yes.
You can do even harder things. We're capable of so many more powerful things in our lives than we can ever think or believe, but it would help tremendously having encouraging forces around us. And if we don't have that, we can be that. And then it turns around, and there will be others. I've seen it in my own life. There was a time in my life that I struggled with anxiety to where I couldn't even drive a car, and I couldn't go anywhere. And it all turned around to do all the stuff I'm doing now. Nobody would ever know, that was part of my life, but it was a big part of my life. And there were forces around me that said the kind of things, and I was the biggest one, saying those things to myself, and it was so limiting. And another thing that was big for me in the book that I actually used in my last interview, telling somebody, it was a music artist, and we were talking about moments and how you say moments create momentum.
Yes.
And those little things over time, how we tend to, and I can't remember who, I know you would know, who said it. And maybe it was, I don't know if it was Steve Jobs or if it was Bill Gates that said something to the effect of, we overestimate how much we can do now and underestimate how much we can do long term. And in that, those little moments over time are how this gets built, how things get changed around, and not being so impatient and down on yourself and talking to yourself a certain way because it's not right now, because of the comparing you're doing with yourself to other people.
Yeah, that whole idea of moments leading to momentum. It's we are all reading all the books about all the things, but it's about consistency and habits and doing
action.
the same thing over and over and over again. And when I wrote that quote, I really was imagining a snowball. You have a tiny snowball and you just keep stacking those actions. And before you know it, that snowball is so big and it's rolling down the hill. And that's you just crushing whatever it is you want to go do because you've done the small things over and over and over again. And you said something earlier about it's sometimes the things that we don't want to do, but those are the things that make the biggest impact. I mean, you can apply this to work, life, whatever. Think about, we want to lose 10 pounds. Well, I'm not going to lose 10 pounds overnight. I'm going to lose 10 pounds by consistently making good choices about food and exercise and all the things that go, and putting the right foods into my body and all the things. And then before long, that 10 pounds is going to be there, but I'm not going from 0 to 10. I'm going from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 and so on through those small actions. And a lot of times we don't give ourselves credit for the little actions. We wait for the big giant thing, but the little actions repeated are what makes the big difference.
Absolutely. And, with your new book, I haven't read it yet. Has nothing to do with the title. I just was on the other book a couple of times, but maybe your new book might not be geared to me, but I would read it just because it's you and the knowledge that you have. So tell us about the new book.
Yes. So the new book, I co-wrote it with my teammate and now business partner, Amy P. Kelly. It's called You Grow Girl. I'm holding it up too. And
you have a workbook for this one as well.
Yes, it's a book and a journal.
Oh, okay.
A beautiful full color journal. But the subtitle of this one is Plant and Pursue the Power of You. So once again, you can tell I'm a self-development junkie. It's coming through in both books. But this book is built around an acronym as well. And the acronym is CULTIVATE. So we're using obviously the growing and cultivating thing, but each chapter in the book corresponds to a letter in the word cultivate. So for example, the C is create the environment for growth. The U is unlock courage and confidence. The L is love yourself and others, and so forth. I won't share all of them, but you can get an idea of kind of where we're going. So we've built this structure, and inside each chapter, it has what we call seed planting pauses. And those pauses are really times inside the book and the chapters where you take a minute to reflect on a topic inside this structure and write a little bit and reflect and just kind of be still and present, thinking about where you want to grow next along the way. And then the journal, we actually built it with the same structure as the book. So the journal actually has chapters. So there are 9 chapters, just like there are 9 letters in the word cultivate. And inside each chapter of the journal, it has 10 days of reflection pages. It has quotes. It has coloring pages for just kind of that stillness and time to be creative and pause and think. And it also has lists. So different kinds of lists to write about whatever chapter you're on. So they're so well integrated. We're just really proud of the way we created all of it. And to your point, I get why you haven't read it because it is targeted at women. It doesn't mean that the lessons
like
and the
they're
content,
self-help lessons, right?
Right. It doesn't mean it doesn't apply to men. It is targeted at women because we really wanted to create a place for women of all ages and stages where they can grow into their full potential. And it's a community. It is not just a book and a journal. This is about creating a movement and a community where women can come together and support each other in their growth, encourage each other along the way, and really just help all of us become our best. Because if we're not growing, we're dying, right? So
Absolutely.
we all are growing all the time. And it's really cool how some of the things are coming to life, because Amy P. Kelly and I, my partner, we both have college-age girls, and they've both read the book, and it resonates with them. But then, for example, I have a mom who is in her 80s, and it also resonates with her because she's still growing and she's still learning, and she wants to always be a lifelong learner. So it's cool when you see kind of multi-generational women reading this and feeling its impact. And that's what we want it to be, of course.
Well, before we close, first of all, I want to say on your books that I personally do a lot of Audible, and there are so many Audible authors that try to read their book that do not have the voice for it. You absolutely have the voice for this. It keeps you engaged, and it's high energy. Of course, you're hearing that, now as we're speaking about the books. But one thing I want to close on is, what do people need you for, and what are the services that you, as Julie Nee, offer?
Oh my gosh. Thank you for asking that. So I do keynote talks all of the time on, of course, the Jon Gordon work, but also on my own work. So keynotes on Mirror, keynotes on You Grow Girl. Amy and I do them both together and separately.
Do you workshops on that
we
as well?
do. Yep. And I was just going to say also workshops. So what we're really, with You Grow Girl, we're really hoping to infiltrate organizations and be able to serve women's groups over time. So not a one and done, but hey, let's go through this bit by bit and tackle each letter in the structure one at a time and really apply. Same thing with Mirror, and really any workshop that I do and that we do. What we really want is for people to walk away with tools and practices so they can put things into action, because anyone can deliver an inspiring keynote or even a fun workshop. I do fun workshops all the time, right? But my goal is I want people to actually do something after experiencing me and my work and our work, because that's where the power is. If somebody changes, and not everybody's going to change, and not everybody's going to like it.
Reach those, yes.
But you just get one person or a couple people to do one thing differently. A lot of times there might be 20 things that you could do, but if we as humans just kind of take one thing at a time and apply it, and then apply another thing, and another thing, and another thing, that then we can just magnify the power.
Right. Lives change.
Yes.
We're brush strokes.
Yes.
In this whole painting. And if you don't like the painting, do something different as your brush stroke.
That's exactly right.
And impact people the right way. You're doing that. And I'm just honored to have you in the studio today. So thank you very much. You've been listening to the powerful Julie Nee here on rBeatz.com and We Talk Raw. And we will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.